Animals appear strong, wild, and perfectly adapted to their environments. A tiger prowling through the jungle, a bird soaring high above the clouds, or a dolphin leaping through the waves. On the surface, they look unstoppable. But hidden inside every body, no matter how mighty or small, is a battlefield. Just like humans, animals fight daily wars against viruses, bacteria, parasites, and even cancers. These invisible threats can spread through the air, creep in through wounds, or hitch a ride on insects. Some diseases kill quickly, while others slowly weaken their victims, making survival in the wild even harder. And here's the fascinating truth. Every time an animal gets sick, it tells a bigger story, not just about them, but about the interconnected health of our entire planet. Because many of the diseases that trouble animals can jump to humans, shaping history, pandemics, and even our future. So today, we dive into the hidden world of animal diseases, exploring how they get sick, how they fight back, and why their survival is tied to ours. Before we continue exploring the hidden world of animal health, I'd like to pause for just a moment. If you're fascinated by the mysteries of how animals live, thrive, and sometimes struggle with illness, then this channel was made for you. Every week, we bring you carefully researched deep dives into the secret lives of animals, their intelligence, their emotions, their senses, and today, the diseases that affect them. By hitting the like button, you're telling us that this kind of content matters, that understanding the challenges animals face is worth sharing. By subscribing, you become part of a growing community that values curiosity, empathy, and respect for the creatures we share our planet with. And if you click the notification bell, you'll never miss the next chapter in this journey. Whether we're diving into the mind of a dolphin, the hidden senses of a bat, or the silent spread of a disease that crosses species. Your support doesn't just help the channel grow. It helps amplify a bigger message that animals are not just background figures in the story of life. They're living beings with complex worlds, and when they get sick, it teaches us something profound about health, survival, and the fragile balance of ecosystems. So, if you haven't already, take a second now. Like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover the untold truths of the animal kingdom. Because the more we understand them, the better chance we have to protect them and ourselves. When we talk about being sick, most of us think about human illnesses, fever, coughs, infections, or maybe something more serious like cancer. But what does it actually mean when an animal gets sick? The answer is both simple and surprisingly complex. At its core, disease in animals is a disruption of normal biological function. Just like in humans, an animal's body is built to maintain balance, a state scientists call homeostasis. Cells work together, organs coordinate, and the immune system acts like a personal army, defending against invaders. When something interferes with that balance, whether the parasite, a virus, a toxic chemical, or even the animal's own genes, the body begins to struggle. That struggle is what we recognize as disease. Illness in animals can show up in many different ways. Sometimes the signs are obvious, like a dog limping, a cat refusing to eat, or a bird with ruffled feathers and no energy. Other times, the signals are invisible. A fish might appear normal, but inside, a parasite is draining its strength. A wild elephant might seem healthy, but hidden tumors or infections could be quietly spreading. Unlike humans, animals can't tell us when they feel pain or discomfort. That makes recognizing disease in them much more challenging. Another important point Being sick doesn't always mean being infected. Some diseases are caused by outside invaders, pathogens like viruses, bacteria, or fungi. Others are internal failures, like genetic mutations, immune system malfunctions, or even cancers. Animals, just like us, can suffer from diabetes, arthritis, allergies, and neurological disorders. Understanding what sickness means in animals is the foundation for everything else in this journey. Because whether we're studying a microscopic virus in a bat, a parasitic worm in a cow, or cancer in a beluga whale, the central question is always the same. What happens when the fragile balance of life is disturbed? If disease is a disruption of life's balance, then pathogens are some of the most common disruptors. Pathogens are tiny organisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites that invade the body and multiply at its expense. They're invisible to the naked eye, yet their effects can be devastating not just to individual animals, but to entire ecosystems. Take viruses, for example. These microscopic strands of genetic material can only survive by hijacking a host's cells, turning them into virus factories. Rabies, distemper, and avian flu are just a few viral diseases that cross species boundaries and spread like wildfire. Viruses are master infiltrators, able to leap from bats to pigs to humans, sparking outbreaks that remind us of how connected we all are. Bacteria, on the other hand, are everywhere. Most are harmless, even helpful, but some turn dangerous under the right conditions. Tuberculosis can devastate elephants and primates, while salmonella lurks in reptiles and birds, sometimes spreading silently to humans. Fungi are another hidden threat. Chytrid fungus has driven dozens of amphibian species toward extinction, attacking their skin and suffocating them slowly. White nose syndrome in bats has killed millions in North America, spreading silently through caves during hibernation. And then there are parasites, creatures that live off other animals. Worms, ticks, fleas, and protozoa invade bodies, draining nutrition, damaging organs, or carrying other deadly pathogens along with them. A single mosquito bite can transmit malaria to a bird, heartworm to a dog, or West Nile virus to a horse. Pathogens are ancient. They've evolved alongside animals for millions of years, constantly adapting, finding new ways to survive. For every animal defense, pathogens develop a counterattack. It's an arms race of survival at the microscopic level. Not all diseases come from invisible invaders. Sometimes, the root of illness is written deep inside an animal's own DNA. These are genetic diseases, flaws in the blueprint of life that affect how cells, organs, and systems function. In humans, we know of conditions like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia. But animals, too, are vulnerable to inherited disorders. For example, dogs, after centuries of selective breeding, are prone to conditions tied to their genes. German shepherds often face hip dysplasia, bulldogs suffer from breathing difficulties, and Dalmatians may inherit deafness. What humans saw as desirable traits in appearance or behavior sometimes carried hidden costs locked into their DNA. In the wild, genetic diseases are rarer but still present. Cheetahs, for instance, are famously inbred due to a population bottleneck thousands of years ago. Their limited genetic diversity makes them vulnerable to defects in fertility, immune system weakness, and congenital abnormalities. In small, endangered populations, the danger of inbreeding magnifies, Each generation increases the risk of passing along harmful mutations. Sometimes genetic disorders are subtle, slowly eroding an animal's resilience. Other times they are fatal from birth, preventing survival altogether. Horses may inherit conditions like polysaccharide storage myopathy, weakening their muscles. Certain fish strains carry genetic deformities that affect swimming. Even elephants, icons of strength, can suffer congenital heart defects. But there's another layer here, epigenetics. Even if the DNA sequence itself is fine, environmental stress can switch certain genes on or off, leading to illnesses. Pollution, poor diet, or captivity stress can all trigger hidden genetic vulnerabilities. Genetic diseases remind us that sickness doesn't always strike from the outside. Sometimes, the most dangerous threat lies within an animal's own biology, passed silently from parent to offspring. When we think of disease, we often imagine germs or inherited flaws. But sometimes, illness emerges from the very environment an animal lives in. Just as humans suffer from pollution, poor diet, or extreme weather, animals are profoundly shaped by their habitats. And when those habitats change, their health can collapse. Consider the coral reefs of our oceans. As warming seas bleach corals, fish that depend on those ecosystems lose not only food and shelter, but also their natural protection from parasites. Stress weakens their immune systems, making them more vulnerable to infections. Similarly, frogs living in polluted wetlands absorb toxins directly through their permeable skin. Many amphibians now show deformities, weakened defenses, and higher mortality rates due to pesticides and industrial runoff. For land animals, habitat destruction and urbanization bring new dangers. Birds nesting in cities often inhale heavy metals and chemicals, which accumulate in their tissues, leading to weaker bones and malformed eggs. Bats forced to roost near farms are exposed to pesticides that poison their systems or disrupt their navigation. Even elephants, long revered as resilient giants, can fall ill when drought or habitat loss leaves them undernourished, dehydrated, and stressed. Another critical environmental factor is climate change. Shifting temperatures expand a range of pathogens and parasites. Mosquitoes, ticks, and fungal spores are now appearing in regions where they were once absent, exposing wildlife to new diseases they have no natural defenses against. For example, white nose syndrome in bats thrives in altered cave conditions, while sea turtles are increasingly struck by fibropapillomatosis, a tumor disease linked to warmer waters. The lesson is clear. An animal's environment is inseparable from its health. Clean water, balanced ecosystems, and stable climates act as invisible shields, guarding against sickness. Not all diseases come from germs or toxins. Sometimes the culprit is much simpler: food, or rather, the lack of it. Just like humans, animals need a balanced diet to survive. When their food sources are scarce, unbalanced, or altered by human activity, they could develop nutritional diseases that weaken their bodies from the inside out. Take grazing animals like cattle, deer, or sheep. Their health depends on the minerals and nutrients found in the plants they eat. When pastures are overgrazed or soil becomes depleted, animals may suffer from deficiencies. A classic example is white muscle disease in livestock caused by too little selenium or vitamin E. This condition damages muscle tissues, leaving young animals weak, unable to stand, and often fatally compromised. Birds, too, fall victim to poor diets. In urban parks, ducks and swans fed on bread, a human treat, not natural nutrition, develop metabolic bone disease. Their bones grow weak, their wings deform, and their lifespan shortens dramatically. Zoos and sanctuaries must carefully plan diets for animals because even a slight imbalance, like too much sugar or too little calcium, could trigger disease. Wild animals in degraded habitats often have no choice but to eat what's left. Polar bears, as sea ice melts, are forced to scavenge human garbage rather than hunt seals. These unnatural diets expose them to not only malnutrition, but also dangerous contaminants. Similarly, parrots deprived of essential minerals gnaw on clay deposits to restore balance. A remarkable natural adaptation, but one that reveals how close they are to deficiency. Even in the oceans, nutritional disease strikes. Fish raised in crowded aquaculture farms sometimes lack essential fatty acids, stunting their growth and leaving them prone to infections. Sea lions along polluted coasts have been found with weakened immune systems tied to vitamin deficiencies caused by declining fish stocks. Not all threats come charging in with claws or fangs. Some are much smaller, so small, in fact, that they slip inside unnoticed. Parasites are the ultimate hidden invaders, feeding off animals from within or clinging to their skin, often causing slow but devastating harm. Parasites come in many forms. Worms like roundworms, tapeworms, and flukes infest the guts, livers, and even blood of animals. In wild herds, a single sick animal can shed thousands of parasite eggs into soil or water, ready to infect the next grazer. In livestock, heavy worm burdens can stunt growth, weaken muscles, and even kill. External parasites like ticks, fleas, and lice are easier to see, but no less dangerous. They don't just irritate the skin, they spread deadly diseases. A tick bite can pass along Lyme disease to deer and dogs. In Africa, tsetse flies transmit sleeping sickness to both cattle and wildlife, draining whole ecosystems of vitality. Even birds aren't spared. Nestlings in some tropical regions are attacked by botflies that burrow beneath their skin, weakening them before they can even fledge. In fish, sea lice latch onto salmon in crowded farms, causing wounds that let bacteria swarm in. But parasites are not just pests. They're survivors, evolved to exploit their hosts. Some manipulate behavior in ways that seem straight out of science fiction. Take the lancet liver fluke. It infects ants, forcing them to climb to the tops of grass blades at night, where grazing animals eat them, completing the fluke's life cycle. Or toxoplasmosis, a parasite that makes rodents lose their fear of cats, leading them right into the predator's jaws. Parasites remind us of an uncomfortable truth. Disease isn't always about weakness. Sometimes it's about strategy. By hiding inside their hosts, reproducing silently, and passing from animal to animal, parasites have become some of the most successful organisms on Earth. For the animals they infect, however, the cost is steep. Viruses are among the oldest and most mysterious enemies animals face. They're not truly alive, yet they shape life in powerful ways. A virus is little more than genetic material wrapped in protein, but once inside a host, it hijacks cells like a thief taking over a factory. Suddenly, the animal's own body becomes a virus-making machine. Every corner of the animal kingdom has viral foes. In mammals, rabies lurks in the saliva of bats, dogs, and raccoons, traveling through nerves to the brain, where it triggers terrifying symptoms of aggression and confusion before death. In birds, avian influenza sweeps through flocks, spreading swiftly through air and water, sometimes even leaping across species. Marine life is not safe either. Dolphins and seals can fall victim to morbilliviruses, causing mass die-offs along coastlines. Fish face viral hemorrhagic septicemia, a disease that fills their bodies with blood clots, leaving entire schools devastated. Even insects are vulnerable. Baculoviruses turn caterpillars into liquefied husks that release new viral particles into the environment. Viruses spread in countless ways. Some hitchhike in blood via mosquito bites. Others drift on the air in droplets, riding a cough or sneeze. Some endure in soil or water until the right host comes along. Their resilience makes them nearly impossible to avoid. And yet, not every viral encounter is a death sentence. Many animals evolve resistance, coexisting with viruses in a delicate balance. Bats, for example, can carry viruses like Ebola and coronaviruses without getting sick, thanks to unique immune systems. For them, viruses are tolerated passengers. For humans and other species, the same viruses can be catastrophic. Viruses are nature's ultimate reminder that sickness isn't always visible. They move silently, unseen, capable of altering the destiny of entire species. To animals, they are ancient enemies, constantly changing, always waiting for the next opportunity to spread. When we hear the word bacteria, we often think of sickness. But the truth is, bacteria are not just enemies. They're also essential allies. Every animal, from insects to elephants, carries trillions of bacteria, many of them living peacefully inside the gut, on the skin, or in the mouth. These microbial companions help digest food, produce vitamins, and keep harmful invaders in check. Without them, survival will be nearly impossible. Yet, some bacteria turn from helpers to harmers, becoming agents of disease. Take anthrax, caused by Bacillus anthracis. Its spores can lie dormant in soil for decades, waiting to infect grazing animals like cattle, sheep, or even wild herbivores. Once inside, the bacteria unleash toxins that overwhelm the body. In birds, avian cholera spreads through crowded colonies, causing sudden mass die-offs. In fish, bacterial gill disease suffocates them by clogging delicate respiratory surfaces. Rodents can carry Yersinia pestis, the plague bacterium, transmitted by fleas, once responsible for some of the deadliest outbreaks in human and animal history. In pets, infections like leptospirosis, caused by spiral-shaped bacteria, spread through contaminated water and can damage kidneys and livers. Even marine mammals suffer. Sea lions and seals face leptospira outbreaks tied to shifting ecosystems and warmer oceans. How do these bacteria spread? Some hitch a ride in contaminated food or water. Others sneak in through wounds or jump between animals through close contact. Stress, overcrowding, and poor nutrition can weaken immune defenses, giving bacteria the upper hand. But not all outcomes are grim. Many animals develop immunity, and veterinarians use antibiotics or vaccines to stop bacterial threats. The balance between good and bad bacteria is a constant struggle, one that shapes animal health every day. Bacteria are both guardians and destroyers, silent helpers most of the time, yet capable of unleashing deadly outbreaks. Rabies is one of the oldest and most feared diseases known to humanity. It doesn't just affect dogs, it can infect nearly every warm-blooded animal, from foxes and bats to cattle and even people. The virus spreads primarily through bites, traveling silently through the nervous system before striking the brain. Once symptoms appear, confusion, aggression, paralysis, rabies is almost always fatal. What makes rabies especially terrifying is its universality. Ancient records from Mesopotamia, India, and Greece describe maddened animals and humans with foaming mouths, centuries before we even knew about viruses. Today, rabies still kills tens of thousands of people every year, mostly from untreated dog bites in regions where vaccines are scarce. In the animal world, rabies alters behavior in ways that increase its chances of spreading. Infected foxes may lose their natural fear and wander into villages. Bats can transmit the virus silently with a single nip. Dogs, often the link between wild animals and humans, remain the primary reservoir in many countries. Yet there is hope. Rabies is entirely preventable with vaccines for both pets and wildlife. Oral vaccine baits dropped in a forest have drastically reduced rabies in foxes and raccoons. In some countries, mass dog vaccination campaigns have nearly eliminated human rabies deaths. Still, in much of the world, rabies remains a lurking threat. It reminds us that even the fiercest predators can be undone by an invisible foe, and that our connection with animal health directly shapes human survival. Avian influenza, better known as bird flu, is one of the most notorious animal diseases of modern times. It is caused by influenza viruses that primarily infect wild birds, especially waterfowl like ducks and geese, but can spill over into chickens, turkeys, and even mammals, including humans. The danger of avian flu lies in its rapid spread and ability to mutate. Wild birds often carry the virus without appearing sick, silently transporting it along their migration routes across continents. When a virus enters poultry farms, crowded conditions allow it to spread like wildfire, wiping out entire flocks within days. For farmers, outbreaks can mean catastrophic losses and the culling of millions of birds to prevent further spread. Some strains of avian flu, such as H5N1 and H7N9, are especially concerning because they occasionally infect people. While human cases are rare, they're often severe, with high fatality rates. Scientists fear that one day, a bird flu virus could adapt to spread easily between humans, sparking a global pandemic. But birds are not just victims. They're also key to our understanding of how these viruses evolve. Studying avian influenza helps researchers predict and prepare for future outbreaks, both in animals and humans. Monitoring wild bird populations, improving farm biosecurity, and developing vaccines are all part of a global strategy to manage the threat. Avian flu is a stark reminder that disease doesn't recognize boundaries between species. The health of wild birds, farmed animals, and humans are tightly connected, making it one of the most important examples of the One Health principle in action. Canine distemper is one of the deadliest viral diseases affecting dogs, and it doesn't stop with them. Caused by the canine distemper virus, CDV, this illness belongs to the same viral family as measles and rinderpest, making it highly contagious and devastating across species. Distemper spreads through direct contact, coughing, and sneezing. Once inside a host, it attacks the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and nervous systems. Symptoms can start as something mild, fever, nasal discharge, coughing, but often progress into seizures, paralysis, and death. For many infected animals, the disease is almost always fatal if left untreated. While pet dogs are the most familiar victims, the virus also strikes wild carnivores, wolves, foxes, lions, tigers, and even endangered species like the African wild dog. Entire populations have collapsed after outbreaks, proving just how dangerous and far-reaching this virus can be. The story of distemper is not only one of tragedy, but also of hope. Vaccination campaigns have saved millions of dogs worldwide and are now considered a crucial part of conservation for vulnerable wild animals. For example, zoo populations and endangered species are sometimes vaccinated to prevent extinction-level losses. Distemper shows us that disease is not bound by species or ecosystems. A virus moving from pet dogs to wildlife, or vice versa, reveals the deep connections between our homes, cities, and the wild. Protecting animals against such diseases is not just about saving pets. It's about preserving entire ecosystems from collapse. Feline immunodeficiency virus, or FIV, is often called the cat version of HIV. Like HIV in humans, it weakens the immune system, making cats vulnerable to infections and illnesses they would normally resist. The virus doesn't usually kill outright. It acts slowly, breaking down defenses over months or years until even minor infections become life-threatening. FIV spreads primarily through bites, which means outdoor cats and males that fight are at higher risk. Unlike rabies or distemper, it isn't spread easily by casual contact like grooming or sharing food bowls. Still, once it enters a population, it can quietly circulate for years before symptoms emerge. The signs of FIV aren't unique at first. Weight loss, fever, swollen lymph nodes, or recurring infections. Over time, cats may develop gum disease, skin problems, or chronic respiratory infections. In later stages, neurological issues or cancers can appear. But here's the hopeful part. Many cats with FIV can live long, healthy lives with proper care. With regular veterinary checkups, indoor living, and a stress-free environment, an FIV-positive cat may live almost as long as any other. What once was considered a death sentence is now better understood as a manageable condition. In the wild, however, FIV can be far more devastating. Populations of wildcats, like lions in Africa or pumas in the Americas, carry strains of the virus. Unlike domestic cats, these species don't have human caregivers to manage symptoms, making outbreaks a real conservation concern. FIV teaches us something powerful. Disease doesn't always mean immediate death. Sometimes, it's a long struggle against a hidden enemy. And in both pets and wildlife, survival depends on the balance between a virus and the body's resilience. If there's one disease that has shaken the natural world in recent decades, it's chytridiomycosis, caused by the chytrid fungus. For frogs and other amphibians, it's been nothing short of catastrophic. This microscopic fungus attacks the skin, the very organ amphibians rely on not just for protection, but for breathing and regulating water and electrolytes. When the fungus spreads, it disrupts this delicate system. Frogs begin to lose their ability to absorb salts. Their hearts can't beat properly, and eventually they die. Unlike many animal diseases that affect only certain regions, chytrid fungus has swept across the globe. From Central America's cloud forests to the mountains of Australia, entire frog populations have collapsed. In some places, over 90% of local species vanished within just a few years. Scientists call it one of the most devastating wildlife diseases ever recorded. But how did it spread so widely? The answer, once again, points to us. International trade in amphibians, whether for pets, zoos, or even laboratory use, helped the fungus hitchhike across continents. What began as a local parasite became a worldwide killer. There's hope, though. Some frog populations are showing resistance, evolving defenses against the fungus. Conservationists are also stepping in, breeding frogs in captivity and reintroducing them into the wild. While we may never fully erase chytrid fungus, science and resilience together offer a path forward. The chytrid story is a reminder that disease doesn't just affect individuals. It can reshape entire ecosystems, silencing the songs of forests and wetlands that once teemed with life. Deep inside dark winter caves across North America, a silent epidemic has been wiping out millions of bats. It's called white nose syndrome, named for the fuzzy white fungal growth that appears on the noses, wings, and ears of infected bats. The culprit is a cold-loving fungus, Pseudogymnoascus destructans, introduced from Europe. While European bats have coexisted with the fungus for centuries, North American species had no defenses when it arrived, triggering mass die-offs. The real danger of the fungus is not just the visible white fuzz, but the way it disrupts the bat's hibernation cycle. Normally, bats enter a deep torpor in winter, conserving energy until spring insects return. But when infected, the irritation and damage to their skin wake them up again and again. Each time, they burn precious fat reserves. With no food available, many bats starve before spring ever arrives. The scale of devastation is staggering. Since its discovery in 2006, white nose syndrome has killed more than 6 million bats in North America, with mortality rates reaching 90 to 100% in some colonies. Entire caves that once pulsed with wings and echoing calls have fallen eerily silent. Why should we care? Because bats are not only fascinating creatures, but also critical allies. They devour countless insects, including agricultural pests, and play a role in pollination and seed dispersal. The loss of bats ripples outward, affecting ecosystems and even human economies. Scientists are racing to find solutions, testing antifungal treatments, probiotics that strengthen bats' natural defenses, and even genetic strategies. Some bats are beginning to show signs of resistance, hinting at a possible future where survivors rebuild their populations. White nose syndrome is a chilling reminder of how quickly a new pathogen can sweep through vulnerable wildlife, rewriting the balance of nature in just a few decades. When we think of cancer, we usually imagine it as a uniquely human struggle. But cancer is not just a human disease. It affects animals too, across species, in ways both familiar and strange. From household pets to wild creatures, cancer is a universal biological battle. In dogs and cats, cancers like lymphoma, skin tumors, and mammary cancers are relatively common, mirroring patterns seen in humans. Veterinary oncologists even use chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation treatments similar to those used in people. Our pets don't just share our homes, they share our vulnerabilities. But cancer in wildlife can look very different. One of the most infamous examples is the Tasmanian devil. These fierce marsupials suffer from a rare and contagious facial tumor disease. Instead of arising spontaneously in each animal, the cancer itself spreads like a parasite, passed from one devil to another through biting, a normal part of their social behavior. The tumors grow rapidly, often preventing the animals from eating, and the disease has devastated populations. Elephants, on the other hand, offer a fascinating contrast. Despite their massive size and the trillions of cells in their bodies, elephants have a surprisingly low rate of cancer. Why? Scientists discovered that elephants have extra copies of a tumor-suppressing gene called P53, which helps their cells quickly detect and kill potentially cancerous mutations. This discovery could hold valuable insights for human medicine. In sea turtles, dolphins, and fish, cancers can sometimes be triggered by pollutants in the water. For example, green sea turtles are plagued by fibropapillomatosis, a disease that causes large, wart-like tumors, often linked to poor water quality and viral infections. Studying cancer in animals is not just about protecting wildlife. It's also about understanding our own biology. The ways animals develop, resist, or adapt to cancer reveal hidden truths about evolution, genetics, and resilience. If viruses and bacteria are invisible invaders, parasites are the more obvious hitchhikers of the animal kingdom. Creatures that live in or on other animals, often at great cost to their hosts. From worms to protozoa to arthropods, parasites represent some of the most ancient and persistent enemies of animal health. Parasites come in many forms. Internal parasites, like roundworms, tapeworms, and flukes, take up residence inside the gut, lungs, or even the bloodstream. They rob animals of nutrients, weaken their immune systems, and sometimes cause fatal blockages. Wild animals and pets alike can suffer heavy burdens when parasite populations grow unchecked. Then there are external parasites, fleas, ticks, mites, and lice that feed on blood, skin, or fur. Beyond causing irritation, these parasites often double as disease vectors, transmitting deadly infections such as Lyme disease, babesiosis, and even plague. But perhaps the most insidious parasites are microscopic protozoa. Consider Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite that completes its life cycle in cats, but can infect nearly every warm-blooded animal on Earth. In rodents, it manipulates brain chemistry, reducing fear of cats and making them easier prey, a chilling example of mind control in nature. Or Plasmodium, the parasite behind malaria, devastating humans and animals alike through mosquito transmission. Parasites don't just sap strength, they can alter entire ecosystems. For example, parasitic worms in grazing animals reduce their growth and fertility, impacting herd populations and predator-prey dynamics. In amphibians, trematode infections can cause grotesque limb deformities, making frogs easy prey and disrupting aquatic food webs. And yet, parasites are not always purely destructive. In some cases, they help regulate animal populations, preventing overgrowth. They also play a role in shaping immune systems, forcing species to evolve stronger defenses. Among the most mysterious and alarming animal health crises of our time is colony collapse disorder, a phenomenon where entire hives of honeybees suddenly vanish, leaving behind only a queen, a few nurse bees, and piles of abandoned honey and brood. For creatures so vital to pollinating crops and wild plants, the collapse of colonies represents not just an insect illness, but a threat to global ecosystems and food security. Scientists have searched for answers, and the truth is complex. Bees are under siege from multiple stressors at once. One culprit is disease, parasitic mites like Varroa destructor, which latch onto bees and feed on their bodily fluids, weakening their immune systems and spreading deadly viruses. Other pathogens, like nosema fungi, invade the digestive tracts of bees, draining their energy and reducing their lifespan. But pathogens alone don't explain the crisis. Modern agriculture has introduced pesticides, especially neonicotinoids, that disrupt bee nervous systems. Sublethal doses don't always kill bees outright, but they impair memory and navigation, leaving foragers unable to return to the hive. Imagine an entire workforce of pollinators, lost in the fields, never finding their way home. Environmental stress adds to the burden. Habitat loss reduces access to diverse nectar and pollen, while monocultures force bees to feed on a single, often nutrient-poor food source. Climate change alters flowering times, mismatching bees with their food supply. Even long-distance transport of hives for commercial pollination exposes bees to exhaustion and novel pathogens. The result is a perfect storm: parasites, pesticides, poor nutrition, climate pressures, and human practices all converging to push bee colonies past their breaking point. Yet there is hope. Conservation efforts, pesticide regulation, and habitat restoration projects are helping bee populations in some regions. And beyond honeybees, thousands of wild bee species, bumblebees, solitary bees. For thousands of years, humans had depended on livestock, cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, and chickens for food, clothing, labor, and trade. But with domestication came an invisible cost. Animals in close quarters became fertile grounds for disease. And when livestock gets sick, the consequences ripple far beyond the farmyard, threatening livelihoods, economies, and even human health. One of the most infamous examples is foot and mouth disease, a highly contagious virus that affects cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats. It causes fever, blisters on the mouth and feet, and crippling weakness. While it rarely kills, the disease spreads like wildfire, forcing mass culling of animals to contain outbreaks. In 2001, a devastating outbreak in the United Kingdom led to the slaughter of over 6 million animals and cost billions of pounds. Another well-known threat is swine flu, caused by influenza viruses that circulate in pig populations. In some cases, these viruses mutate and jump into humans, sparking pandemics. The 2009 H1N1 outbreak began in pigs before sweeping across the globe, reminding us that animal health is inseparably tied to human health. Avian influenza is another powerful example. Birds in intensive poultry farms can carry strains that devastate flocks. Some forms even pose zoonotic risks, killing humans in rare but severe cases. When outbreaks occur, governments often enforce the mass culling of millions of chickens or ducks to halt the spread, a grim but necessary step to prevent economic and health disasters. But it's not only viruses. Bovine tuberculosis continues to trouble cattle herds in many countries, sometimes spilling into wild species like badgers and deer. Parasitic infections, worms, ticks, and lice cause chronic health issues that sap productivity and weaken animals' immune defenses. What makes livestock diseases especially concerning is the scale. Modern farming often means thousands of animals packed into close quarters, where one sick individual can. Every living creature, from the tiniest insect to the largest elephant, carries within it a hidden army, an immune system built to fight disease. Just like humans, animals rely on complex biological defenses that patrol their bodies, seeking out and destroying invaders. But the way these systems work and their strengths and weaknesses vary dramatically across species. Mammals like dogs, cats, and primates have immune systems that resemble our own, with white blood cells, antibodies, and specialized proteins designed to target viruses and bacteria. Birds, however, take a different approach, producing unique immune cells in a specialized organ called the bursa of Fabricius. Reptiles and amphibians have slower but still powerful defenses, sometimes relying heavily on antimicrobial peptides in their skin to ward off infection. Invertebrates, such as insects and crustaceans, lack the sophisticated adaptive immune system found in vertebrates. Instead, they depend on innate immunity, a simpler but incredibly efficient system that responds instantly to threats. A bee's body, for instance, can release antimicrobial proteins within minutes of injury or infection, helping protect the hive as a whole. Even more fascinating, some animals have immune tricks that humans can only dream of. Sharks, for example, produce specialized antibodies that are smaller and more stable than ours, sparking medical research for new human therapies. Elephants, with their many copies of a cancer-fighting gene called P53, seem unusually resistant to tumors. And bats, often reservoirs for dangerous viruses, can tolerate infections that would devastate other species, likely due to their finely tuned immune responses. The immune system is the front line of survival. For animals, it's not just about staying alive. It's about adapting to the threats of their environment. From the depths of the ocean to the heart of the jungle, nature has engineered countless strategies to defend life against disease. When animals get sick, their bodies call upon some of the oldest defenses in evolution: fever and inflammation. These reactions may seem uncomfortable, even dangerous, but they're not accidents. They are deliberate strategies for survival. Fever is more than just a rise in body temperature. It is the body's way of turning up the heat to make life harder for invaders. Many bacteria and viruses thrive only within a narrow temperature range. By pushing the body above that limit, fever slows down their ability to multiply. At the same time, immune cells work faster and more effectively in warmer conditions. Mammals like lions or humans often develop fever naturally, but even cold-blooded animals, such as lizards, will seek out warm rocks or sunlight when sick, creating what scientists call a behavioral fever. This shows that fever is not just a human trait. It's a universal survival tool. Inflammation works differently. When tissues are injured or infected, chemical signals flood the area, calling in immune cells to fight intruders and repair damage. Blood vessels widen, circulation increases, and the area becomes swollen, warm, and often painful. To us, this feels unpleasant, but for the animal, it means the body is isolating the danger and mobilizing its defenses. A wolf with a cut paw or a bird with an infected feather follicle may both show swelling, evidence that their immune systems are actively working. Together, fever and inflammation act as the body's built-in alarm and weapon system, slowing down pathogens while buying time for more precise defenses to activate. They remind us that sickness is not just weakness. It is also a sign that the body is fighting for life. Not all defenses against disease come from within the bloodstream. Many animals rely on behavioral strategies, simple actions that, over millions of years, have evolved into powerful shields against sickness. One of the most universal: grooming. Watch a cat spend hours licking its fur, and you might think it's just vanity. But this behavior helps remove parasites, dirt, and even infectious agents before they could do harm. Birds do something similar through preening, carefully oiling their feathers to keep them waterproof and free of lice or mites. Primates, such as chimpanzees and baboons, elevate grooming to a social ritual, picking through each other's fur not just for hygiene, but also to strengthen bonds within the group. In these moments, health and society intertwine. A well-groomed primate is not only cleaner, but also more connected, and this reduces stress, which itself lowers disease risk. But grooming is only part of the picture. Many species show instinctive sickness behaviors. A sick wolf retreats from the pack. A feverish lizard spends extra time basking in the sun, and a fish infected with parasites may rub against rocks to scrape them off. These actions are not random. They are survival strategies. Withdrawal protects the group from contagion, while self-directed behaviors help the animal heal or fight back. Even more fascinating, some animals turn to the environment itself for aid. This is known as zoopharmacognosy, animal self-medication. Chimpanzees have been observed chewing bitter leaves with antiparasitic properties. Monarch butterflies lay their eggs on specific milkweed varieties that protect their caterpillars from parasites. Elephants have been seen eating certain plants before giving birth, suggesting they know which leaves carry medicinal effects. What seems like instinctive behavior is, in many cases, highly effective, biologically wired pharmacy. These small acts, whether a cat's careful lick a bird's meticulous preening, or an elephant. When we think of immunity, we often picture it as something individual, your body, your defenses. But in the wild, immunity is also a collective phenomenon. Entire populations of animals can gain resilience when enough individuals develop protection, a concept known as herd immunity. In a herd of wildebeest crossing the African savanna, not every individual has to survive an infection for the group to endure. If enough animals recover and become resistant, the disease can no longer spread easily, protecting even those who remain vulnerable. This same principle applies in flocks of birds, schools of fish, and colonies of bats. Disease doesn't just strike at random. It depends on the network of interactions within the group. Take measurable outbreaks in wild primates. Researchers have seen viral epidemics burn through a troop, leaving survivors with antibodies that help buffer the next generation. In some cases, mother's milk even passes temporary immunity to infants, giving them a head start in resisting infection. But herd immunity in the wild comes at a cost. The process often involves losses along the way. Many fall sick before enough are immune. It's nature's balancing act, survival of the group, even if not every individual makes it through. This differs from human societies, where vaccines can help achieve herd immunity without such devastating losses. Yet the principle remains the same. When animals live in groups, they share more than just food, protection, and companionship. They also share collective defenses, woven through biology and behavior. A pack of wolves, a murmuration of starlings, a colony of bees, all remind us that in the natural world, health isn't just about one life, but about the strength of many lives together. When we think of animals defending themselves against disease, we often imagine immune cells, fevers, or grooming. But some of the most powerful protectors are invisible allies, tiny microbes that form symbiotic partnerships with their hosts. These hidden defenders can mean the difference between life and death. Take frogs, for example. Across the world, amphibians have been devastated by the chytrid fungus, a pathogen responsible for driving dozens of species to extinction. Yet some frogs survive. Why? Because their skin is home to special bacteria that produce antifungal chemicals. These microbes act like a biological shield, protecting the frog from infection where its immune system might fail. In the ocean, coral reefs tell a similar story. Corals survive thanks to symbiotic algae that not only provide energy, but also help them resist disease. When climate change causes corals to lose these algae in bleaching events, their natural defenses collapse, leaving them exposed to deadly pathogens. Here, we see how fragile and vital these microbial bonds really are. Mammals, including humans, dogs, and elephants, also depend on microbial defenders. The gut microbiome, a vast ecosystem of trillions of bacteria, competes with invaders, produces protective compounds, and even trains the immune system. Without these microbial partners, animals would be far more vulnerable to gut infections and malnutrition. Even insects rely on microbial alliances. Aphids carry bacteria that protect them from parasitic wasps. Termites can digest wood only because their gut microbes break down cellulose, while also preventing harmful microbes from taking hold. In nature, survival is rarely a solo act. Symbiosis shows us that the line between self and other blurs. Animals are not just individuals, but ecosystems supported by microbial allies. Disease is not only about what invades, but also about who stands guard. When forests fall, wetlands dry, and grasslands are cleared, animals don't just lose their homes, they often get sick. Habitat loss is one of the greatest drivers of disease in the natural world, and it works in subtle, dangerous ways. Picture a bat colony in a dense forest. There, the bats have plenty of roosting sites, space to spread out, and access to wild fruit. But when that forest is cut down, the bats are forced to move closer to farms, towns, and even livestock pens. Suddenly, diseases that once stayed deep in the wilderness, like Nipah virus or coronaviruses, find new bridges to humans and domestic animals. Habitat loss literally pushes wildlife into our backyards, raising the odds of cross-species outbreaks. The same pattern is seen with rodents. In fragmented forests, rat and mouse populations explode because predators disappear while food from farms and garbage piles increases. These rodents often carry hantaviruses, leptospirosis, and other pathogens. By changing the landscape, humans unknowingly create perfect breeding grounds for pests and the diseases they spread. Even aquatic habitats tell this story. Wetland destruction drives birds and mosquitoes into tighter spaces, where avian flu and West Nile virus spread more easily. Rivers polluted by runoff or stripped of vegetation can stress fish populations, weakening their immune systems and making fungal or bacterial infections rampant. The connection is clear. When ecosystems break, diseases flourish. Habitat loss doesn't just reduce biodiversity. It reshapes animal behavior, increases stress, and breaks natural disease barriers that once kept humans safe. In other words, when we destroy animal homes, we create the conditions for sickness to spread, not only among wildlife, but often straight back to us. Protecting habitats is not just conservation. It's public health defense on a global scale. Picture a bustling wet market, narrow aisles, the smell of raw meat in the air, and cages stacked one on top of another. Chickens, ducks, snakes, civets, pangolins, even bats, all trapped in crowded, stressful conditions. These animals would never cross paths in the wild, but here they are pressed together, weak and vulnerable. This unnatural mix is not only cruel, but also dangerous, because it creates the perfect environment for diseases to emerge. When animals are stressed, their immune systems falter, making them more susceptible to infections. Viruses, bacteria, and parasites multiply rapidly, passing from one species to another in ways that would almost never occur in nature. Add humans to the scene, handling, butchering, and eating these animals, often without proper hygiene, and you have the ideal recipe for zoonotic spillover when pathogens jump from animals into people. History shows us how deadly this can be. The SARS outbreak in the early 2000s was linked to civets sold in Chinese live markets. Ebola outbreaks have been tied to bushmeat hunting of primates and bats. Even HIV is believed to have originated from the hunting and trade of wild chimpanzees. And in the case of COVID-19, while debates continue, wet markets once again became the focus as a possible spark for a global pandemic. But it's not just viruses. The wildlife trade moves parasites, fungi, and bacteria across borders. An exotic pet shipped overseas might carry a disease that local wildlife and people have never encountered. In this way, a single infected animal can unleash a global health crisis. The problem is not only the markets, but the global demand driving them. Luxury foods, traditional medicine, exotic pets. Every purchase fuels an industry that threatens biodiversity, animal welfare, and human health. The wildlife trade is not just a conservation issue. It's a public health time bomb. For thousands of years, humans and animals have lived side by side. Domestication gave us loyal dogs, graceful cats, powerful horses, and food-producing animals like cows, chickens, and pigs. But this closeness also came with an invisible cost: the sharing of diseases. When we invite animals into our homes, barns, and cities, the boundary between their health and ours becomes paper thin. Many of the world's most significant diseases are believed to have emerged from domesticated animals. Measles, for example, is thought to have evolved from a virus in cattle. Influenza likely has origins in pigs and birds. Even the common cold has ties to animal hosts. Living in tight contact gave pathogens the perfect bridge from animal bodies into human populations. Today, our pets continue to shape this story. Dogs can transmit rabies, parasites like hookworms, and even certain strains of influenza. Cats may carry toxoplasmosis, a parasite that can silently spread through contact with their waste. Birds like parrots and pigeons can spread psittacosis, sometimes called parrot fever. And reptiles, beloved as exotic pets, often carry salmonella, a bacteria dangerous to young children and the elderly. Yet it's not all one way. Humans also pass diseases to animals, so-called reverse zoonosis. Cats and dogs have been infected with strains of human flu and, during the COVID-19 pandemic, even contracted the virus from their owners. Our shared environments mean microbes flow in both directions, weaving our health into a single fabric. Domestication brought comfort, companionship, and survival, but it also stitched us into a web of shared vulnerability. Every cough, every fever, every infection in our pets is a reminder that humans and animals are not separate worlds. We are partners in health, for better and for worse. Modern farming has revolutionized food production, but it has also created an invisible problem: disease hotspots. In factory farms, animals like pigs, chickens, and cows are often confined in crowded barns, with thousands living side by side. This density may be efficient for human consumption, but for pathogens, it's paradise. Overcrowded animals face constant stress, poor air circulation, and limited hygiene. Stress alone weakens their immune systems, making them easier targets for infection. Once a virus, bacterium, or parasite enters the environment, it can sweep through the entire population in days. Influenza viruses, for example, thrive in poultry and swine operations, mutating rapidly and sometimes jumping into humans. The 2009 H1N1 swine flu pandemic is a reminder of how quickly farm pathogens can spill into global health. To control outbreaks, many farms rely heavily on antibiotics, not only to treat disease, but often as a preventive measure. This widespread use fuels antibiotic resistance, creating superbugs that threaten both animal and human medicine. Factory farming may feed billions, but it also poses a critical question. Are we trading food security for future pandemics? Climate change is not just about hotter summers or stronger storms. It is reshaping the invisible world of disease. As ecosystems shift, animals and the pathogens that infect them are forced into new patterns of survival. This creates dangerous opportunities for diseases to spread in ways the world has never seen before. Insects are one of the clearest examples. Mosquitoes, once limited to tropical zones, are now thriving in regions once too cold for them. This means malaria, Zika, and heartworm are showing up in places where animals had no natural defenses. Ticks are spreading north, carrying Lyme disease into populations unprepared for its impact. Warmer waters also disrupt marine life. Fish stressed by rising ocean temperatures are more vulnerable to fungal and bacterial infections. Coral reefs, already bleaching, face additional assaults from pathogens that thrive in warmer seas. Amphibians, especially frogs, struggle against the deadly chytrid fungus, which spreads faster under altered rainfall and humidity. Even frozen landscapes are no longer safe. As permafrost melts, long-dormant microbes, locked away for thousands of years, may be released back into the environment, exposing modern animals to ancient threats they've never encountered before. Climate change is not only about the weather. It is about the unseen, cascading effects on animal health. By reshaping habitats, stressing immune systems, and unleashing new diseases, our warming planet is rewriting the rules of survival for animals everywhere. Studying animal diseases is like solving a giant, living puzzle, where every animal, pathogen, and habitat is a piece that connects to a much larger picture. Scientists approach this challenge with tools that span from the microscopic to the global. In the lab, they peer into cells under powerful microscopes, looking for the telltale signs of viruses and bacteria at work. Genetic sequencing allows them to trace the exact identity of a pathogen, its origins, and even how it mutates over time. In the field, researchers observe wildlife directly, monitoring behavior, collecting biological samples like blood, saliva, or feces, and mapping patterns of illness across regions. These studies can reveal when a strange new disease is brewing, long before it spreads to other species, or even to humans. Modern technology is pushing this research further than ever. Satellite tracking shows how animals move across landscapes, and computer models predict how diseases might spread if environments continue to change. Some projects combine biology with AI, using big data to detect outbreaks by analyzing thousands of samples faster than humans ever could. Yet, studying animal disease is not without obstacles. Many wild animals live in remote, dangerous, or delicate environments where capturing and sampling them is both risky and ethically complex. In addition, some pathogens are highly contagious, requiring extreme safety measures in the lab. Despite the challenges, this work is vital. Without studying animal diseases, we would not have vaccines for pets, strategies to protect endangered species, or warnings about zoonotic diseases that might leap into human populations. In many ways, the health of the animal kingdom is like an early warning system for humanity, one that depends on dedicated science, careful observation, and a willingness to see the invisible connections that tie us all together. When we think about vaccines, most people picture human medicine, but animals have their own extensive vaccine and treatment systems designed to protect them from some of the world's deadliest diseases. Just as in humans, vaccines work by introducing a harmless piece of a virus or bacterium into the animal's body, training its immune system to recognize and fight the real thing later. For pets, vaccines against rabies, canine parvovirus, feline leukemia, and distemper are standard, saving millions of animal lives each year. In livestock, vaccines protect against outbreaks of foot and mouth disease, anthrax, brucellosis, and other illnesses that can devastate entire herds. Even in wildlife, vaccines are used strategically. Oral rabies vaccines hidden in bait have been distributed across forests and countryside, dramatically reducing rabies cases in wild foxes, raccoons, and coyotes. But vaccines are just the first line of defense. Veterinary medicine also includes treatments such as antibiotics for bacterial infections, antifungals, antiparasitic drugs, and advanced cancer therapies for pets. In some cases, treatments closely mirror those used in humans. Dogs with diabetes may receive insulin, cats with kidney disease undergo dialysis, and even chemotherapy is offered to animals with certain cancers. For zoo and sanctuary animals, custom-tailored medical plans are designed to balance conservation with welfare, ensuring endangered species get the best chance at survival. Still, there are major challenges. Pathogens evolve, new diseases emerge, and not all vaccines are available or practical for every species. In farming, overuse of antibiotics has raised global concerns about antimicrobial resistance, a problem that threatens both animal and human health. In wildlife, mass vaccination is nearly impossible except in targeted programs, leaving ecosystems vulnerable. Yet, each success story proves what is possible when science and compassion converge. Healthier animals. When we talk about animal diseases, it's impossible to separate them from humans and the environment. This is where the One Health approach comes in. One Health is the idea that the health of animals, humans, and ecosystems is deeply interconnected. Think of it as a triangle. If one corner is weak, the entire structure begins to collapse. For example, when forests are cleared, bats lose their habitat, and they may seek food near farms and villages. This increases the chance of viruses spilling into livestock or humans. When rivers are polluted, fish and amphibians fall ill, and entire food webs unravel, affecting human communities that depend on them. Even climate change reshapes disease patterns, allowing mosquitoes carrying malaria or dengue to spread into new areas. On the other side, improvements in animal health also benefit people. Vaccinating dogs against rabies doesn't just save countless dogs. It also prevents thousands of human deaths every year. Safeguarding bee colonies ensures that crops are pollinated, sustaining global food supplies. Protecting elephants, dolphins, and gorillas from deadly pathogens doesn't only preserve biodiversity. It also shields humans from the risk of new pandemics. Scientists, doctors, veterinarians, and ecologists now increasingly work together under this One Health vision. It's no longer enough to study diseases in isolation. We must connect the dots, because the virus that emerges in a wild animal, the bacteria that mutates in a farm, or the parasite that spreads in a warming wetland may one day reshape human societies. One Health reminds us of a simple truth. Protecting animals is protecting ourselves, and protecting ecosystems is safeguarding the future of all life on Earth. When animals get sick, it raises not only biological questions, but also ethical ones. What responsibilities do we, as humans, truly carry? On one hand, animals in the wild face natural dangers, predators, hunger, disease, that have always been part of life. Some argue we should let nature take its course. Yet, in today's world, humans are rarely neutral bystanders. Through deforestation, pollution, farming, and climate change, we have directly shaped the environments that make animals more vulnerable to disease. When a bat population declines because of a fungus spread by human cave exploration, or when livestock are confined in cramped factory farms where illnesses thrive, our choices tip the balance. Can we then claim that doing nothing is ethically neutral? Ethics also stretches across species boundaries. Should the suffering of a dog or a chimpanzee weigh more heavily than that of a frog or a bee? Philosophers and scientists debate whether consciousness or intelligence determines moral value. But from an ecological perspective, every species plays a role. Losing frogs to chytrid fungus disrupts entire wetlands. Losing bees weakens food systems. Compassion for animals isn't just a moral luxury. It's a practical necessity for the health of ecosystems and ourselves. At the same time, ethical dilemmas arise in how we respond. Should we treat wild populations with vaccines, as with oral rabies programs for foxes? Should we intervene when fungal diseases threaten bats or amphibians? Some worry that meddling too much could create unintended consequences. Yet others argue that since human actions often drive these crises, we bear responsibility to act. Ultimately, the ethical dimension of animal disease asks us to expand our circle of concern, to recognize that an animal's pain is not so different from our own, to understand that the health of the weakest creature can ripple out to shape our collective survival. and to accept that with our power comes the duty to act. And from the tiniest bee fighting off invisible parasites to elephants facing cancers in their vast bodies, the story of animal disease is a reminder that sickness is a universal battle of life itself. Animals do not live apart from us. They breathe the same air, share the same microbes, and walk the same earth. Their diseases are not only their own. They ripple through ecosystems, touch our food, threaten our health, and shape the balance of nature. We've seen how viruses spread across continents, how fungi can push entire species toward extinction, and how stress from captivity or climate change weakens immune defenses. We've also seen resilience, immune systems rallying, animals grooming one another, and herds building resistance. The fight against disease is not hopeless. It is a story of survival written into the very fabric of life. But here lies the challenge. As humans, we hold an outsized influence. Our choices can either fuel outbreaks or help prevent them. Protecting forests, treating livestock responsibly, reducing wildlife trade, and researching new vaccines are not only acts of compassion, but also acts of self-preservation. So as we close this chapter, remember, every sick animal tells us something about ourselves. Their struggles mirror our own, their survival ensures ours, and their health is deeply woven into the fate of the planet. If you found this journey into the hidden world of animal disease enlightening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Join us as we continue exploring the mysteries of life, health, and survival. And next time, we'll dive into a question both fascinating and unsettling. How do animals get cancer? A closer look at a disease we thought was uniquely human, revealed in surprising ways across the animal kingdom.